Good morning and welcome to this grand celebration of the extraordinary life of Sharon K. Durrant. We are so glad that you're here. We've come to set aside our own lives to mourn and remember Sharon. We have gathered here to celebrate her life well lived, which reminds me of the words from Hunter S. Jordan that I want to open the service up with. Life is not a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." And when you look at all these wonderful pictures and all that will be shared today with you about Sharon's life, you'll agree with me, if you haven't already, that that's how Sharon lived her life. We've come from our various lives to set aside time to honor and celebrate the life of a remarkable woman. The passing of a life reminds us to live life more fully. For with death's shadows upon us, there is an imperative to live more fully, more kindly, more graciously. While Sharon has passed beyond this mortal world into the realm of the spirit, her goodness, her essence lives in everyone who loved and remember her. And one more reading before we go to calling the elements. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I did not sleep. I am 1,000 winds blowing. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds and circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. Mary Elizabeth Fry. And now, before calling up the elements, Chip and Tony.
Before the chalice is lit, we wish to honor the elements which surround us and move through us. It is an act of reverence to the universal life force and an act of self-love to honor the manifest miracle of these bodies in which our sacred souls dwell.
We will also invite the spirit of life in the form of a feminine archetype, which feels appropriate in celebration of a woman who loved women and dedicated much of her life to fighting for our protection.
We will be calling the elements beginning in the east. That's directly behind me. As willing and able, we would invite you to stand and face the elements as they are called. Tony and I will remain facing this way. I'll point to the elements as we get to them, and at conclusion of calling the elements, we will then face the center for the calling of the Spirit. Facing the east. Into the east we cast our gaze to be witness to the dawning of the light of remembrance. We breathe deeply the clarity of the element of air, that our beloved Sharon may appear in mind's eye unhindered. With open hearts and with gratitude, we honor the air and bid thee hail and welcome. Hail and welcome.
Into the south we cast our gaze upon ancient embers. Burning from the beginning of time, the element of fire inspires us to go within and to reach for those who have gone before. Illuminated by the beacon that calls our beloved Sharon home with reverence, we honor the fire and bid thee hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome. To the west. Into the west we cast our gaze upon the watery mist. Through floating drops of love and memory, we focus upon the veiled to witness the arrival of our beloved Sharon as she steps toward us. All fear and regret is washed in the element of water. All that remains is the purest love. With open hearts and gratitude, we honor the water and bid thee hail and welcome. Hail and welcome. To the north.
Into the north we cast our gaze upon the lush green lap of the mother, grateful for the strength she gave us to survive great loss. We eagerly await her generous return. Our beloved Sharon will soon rest in the embrace of the earth, and we are grateful for her care. With open hearts and feet firmly planted in gratitude, we honor the earth and bid thee hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome. We call upon the Maiden of Flowers to the center and the goddess of the underworld, Persephone, whose sacrifice to the dead brings a mother's grief and a blanket of cold upon the earth. Persephone, whose great heart and deep love offers the rich red seeds of welcome to all who seek entrance into the world beyond that which the living may see.
With reverence, we reach to Persephone with hope and gratitude for the honor of connecting with the spirit of our beloved Sharon as we celebrate the extraordinary life that she shared so generously with all of us. Persephone of the underworld, our hearts are open to receive your blessing. We bid thee hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome. You may be seated. Thank you.
Do you want me to start off with this? Mm-hmm. Okay. Where you want me? For the chalice lighting, it is our custom to light our chalice, which is a symbol of our faith. The light from this flame points to the truth of love that rests in our hearts. And live truth, and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Thank you all for being here.
I'm Melissa Baker, and I was practically born into this church as my parents Bill and Sandy Baker joined when I was 2. Though I had exited in my teens, I returned to this community in my early 20s, at which time my parents introduced me to their best friends, Sharon and Ellen. The 4 of them loved each other, and well, I loved them too. When I left the corporate world over 5 years ago, I took notice of my father's growing need for care, and at the same time appreciated the freedom I had to be of service to others. I was among many in Sharon and Ellen's community who would become chariot driver and wheelchair maiden when they needed to go to the doctor or the VA. After Sharon broke her femur 4 years ago, I was there to help her transition from hospital to rehab and back home again. Those were challenging days for our beloved. At one point, she looked up at me and asked, "Why are you doing this?" My reply was simply, "My love language is showing up. The truth is, I love you, and you deserve this." So, dear friends, and beloved community, thank you for showing up today. Sharon deserves this.
As black as a raven, with winter's cold breath blowing hard. She issued her warm invitation, printed plain on a simple white card. Bring your lamps and lanterns here on this last darkest day of the year. Let our hearts be burning bright. Through the window I'll see you tonight. Candles and other relations waltz through the door and in time. Of illumination, while Aurora went dancing outside. Bring your lamps and lanterns here on this last darkest day of the year. Let our hearts be burning bright. Through the window I'll see you tonight. There were pictures of lighthouses shining, a red miner's helmet aglow, and the moon would come out of its hiding, flowing down on a cover of snow. She raised up her glass then to them, and she said, "You're my friends, and wherever life takes me, you're when. You're my home, that's the truth, and the light through the window is you. So bring your lamps and lanterns here on this last darkest day of the year. Let our hearts be burning bright. Through the window I'll see you tonight. Through the window I'll see you tonight.
We miss you, Sharon. That dulcimer you do is amazing.
How shall we remember Sharon? The facts of her life are these. Sharon K. Durrant of Orlando died of complications related to heart failure on January 23, 2023. It feels impossible to summarize the entire life of an extraordinary being within a few paragraphs, so we ask for forgiveness for the vastness of truth we must compress. Her family called her Kay. She was born on September 11, 1944, to Ruth, or Roselle, and John Durrant in the Grandview suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Her family was made complete with the late arrival of her sister, Marilyn, 3 years later. They were an active and playful family that spent their warm weekends at the Scioto River, boating and water skiing, while some winter weekends were spent snow skiing. The girls adore their dog, Frisky, and their pet, white rabbits. Sharon may or may not have tucked her little sister into a cabinet on occasion, but more often than not, she did let her out. Together, they tested out the tin can telephone line and discovered that it worked all the way across the street. Her cousins remember her as fun-loving and ready for adventure, beating everyone at a game of pitch, turning staircases into mountains, and hopping a fence to watch the local drive-in movie. Sharon graduated from Grandview Heights High School in 1962. She was an athlete and president of the Girls Athletic Association, field hockey, basketball, table tennis, a musician, a leader, an honor student, an editor, a camp counselor, and a thespian. She played piano but loathed recitals. She played guitars and sang with the choir. She graduated with a degree in psychology from Miami University at Oxford in 1966 and was teaching in the Flint public school system when she married Richard Langworthy. She also received a degree in guidance and counseling from Eastern Michigan University in 1971. Though her marriage to Thank you. That was left out. See, this is what happens when you want to go your own way. You want to go rogue. Though the marriage didn't last, many are grateful that it brought her to Florida in 1973. She was a school counselor at Sable Point Elementary in Longwood, Florida, and by the end of the decade, she was building her own business as a family and marriage counselor in Central Florida. She honed her musical talents, and while playing her dulcimer with the amazing all-girls string band, a woman named Hone became quite smitten. Ellen and Sharon began their relationship on August 26, 1979. Together, they showed us all how to show up and stand up for what is right and true. They were active members of the National Organization for Women and founding sisters of the Women's Liberation Front of Central Florida. They marched for women's rights, reproductive freedom, and equal rights amendments, provided training for women's clinic defenders, and they never stopped showing up. As they aged and marching became more difficult, they showed up in their electric vehicle long before it was on trend. They joined the First Unitarian Church of Orlando in May of 1990 and became active and involved members of this beloved community. She and Ellen were the first gay couple to be legally married at 1U, decades after their union ceremony in Gore Hall. Sharon was on the board of the Alliance. She played the dulcimer, which I think everybody knows. Pictures of, well, not pictures, actual instruments she owned are up there. She was a member of the folk ensemble. She sang with the Chalice Choir and also served as a pastoral care associate. Sharon and Alan also joined numerous marches, completing their outfits with the pink pussy hats that Sharon herself needed. They joined marches for women, marriage equality and gay rights, March for Our Lives, against gun violence, and stood on the side of love for Black Lives Matter. When they lost their grandson, Jeff, they marched for suicide prevention with Donated Life America and Our Legacy for organ donation in support of their daughter, Ellen. She also sat and sang with her dulcimer in her lap with other lesbian tenors and the Harmony Sisters and perform on the steps of the Orange County Courthouse demanding marriage equality. She traveled once a month to Barberville to offer free dulcimer lessons and often auctioned off lesson or homemade pizzelles of the month to raise funds to support the church. But none of this covers the most important role Sharon played in the lives of her family. Stepmother to Ellen's daughter, Ellen Jr., sole mother to Junior's best friend, Michelle, grand to Junior's two sons, two boys, Gregory and Jeffrey, great-grand to Gregory and Gina's daughter, Anthony Jr., children to Gregory and Gina's children, Anthony Jr., Joanna, Charlotte, and Eleanor. Sharon and Alan were involved with girls softball with their daughter and boys little league with their grandsons. They created the Rookie Girls Softball Division program and served as coaches and umpires, then later created the Girls Softball Big League Division. They serve as loyal grannies and occasional umpires for the Azalea Park Little League and North Orlando Kiwanis Little League during Greg and Jeff's tenure. In her final weeks, those who loved Sharon reached out from all facets of her life, wanting her to know how instrumental she was in helping them to feel safe in their authenticity, to speak their truth without hesitation, to feel confident in their skin, to know they had been heard, held, and valued for exactly who they are. If she didn't know how well loved and respected she was before her illness, she certainly understood it as those messages came flooding in. While completing her 5 wishes form, which is an act of love that she declared for those of us who loved her, so we would know how to care for her at the end of her life, she was given the question to answer, how do I wish to be remembered? And her reply was simple. She is a pain in the ass, but she was our pain in the ass. We can't imagine life without her, but we are far better beings for having shared this life with her. We are blessed by the presence of Sharon's family, who are here today in person. Her wife of 43 years, Ellen Hone, her stepdaughter, Ellen Jr., her husband, Tim. There's Tim. Her sister-in-law, Penny Beckett, and husband, Johnny. And we send our condolences and wishes and comfort to family who are watching this celebration at home. And now, we ask you to sing with the full ensemble and the Chalice Choir, Spirit of Life. The words will be projected on the screen.
All the stirrings of
now invite some friends and family of Sharon to come up and share memories of this extraordinary woman. They are Diane Farr, Marty Haney, Marma Rasmussen, Gregory Watson, who will hear via audio recording, and Barbara Howe.
Hello, everyone. I see some people I haven't seen in a while. Bet you didn't think I'd be here. I would rather not be here with you today, but here we are. So, I first met Sharon when I was probably 11 years old, estimated. Is that about right? That was 46 years ago. That's scary. I played softball at Isaiah Park Little League since I was 9 years old, but a couple years into that, I was thrilled to see 2 women umpires in uniform. I was like, whoa. At 11 years old, that was pretty cool. I had never seen something like that before. They look really good. We won't go there. It was really cool either way. Little did I know at that time, Sharon would stand for so much more to me than just an umpire or what a woman could become, right? At that time. A few years later, Sharon and Ellen became softball coaches. That was interesting. They fought really hard to create what was then considered the big league, right? So in the little league, it's when all the little kids end up aging out of the little league, and we had nowhere to play at that time. So they created a big league for after 15, 16, 17, and up, as I remember it. And this could be all wrong, because I have no memory. We're just gonna go with it. Just pretend it's right. It's okay. It's my story. It's okay. Thank you, baby. Okay, so we would play other regions around the state, or I would say the district. And it was very interesting to have those 2 as a coaching duo, quite honestly. Of the one, Sharon was the quieter, at least that's how I remembered her. She and Ellen were a perfect yin and yang a lot of times. One was quiet, the other one not so much. One was overly passionate, the other one reeled her in, much like my wife and I. Wonder where I learned that from. Okay, we'll go on. They both had such hope and a positive outlook for what equal rights were supposed to mean, what women in sports was supposed to look like. They had that. They knew that. They probably knew at some point they were going to make sure the Olympics happened with women's softball. They probably knew that, and that drove them to some amazing places, right? We've all witnessed that. Through that decade of my life, 11 on, Sharon became more of a parental figure, a mentor also, rather than a female umpire or coach. Perhaps that had more to do with the sympathy of that kid, little kid, whose mother, that Ellen, and she had to eject from softball games for bad language or alcohol at the field. I mean, what's a little party going on? It's okay. It was never a dull moment. It was also the first time I realized someone could put her in her place. And that might have been the beginning of the whole hero worship of those 2 women, right? Because that was something. While Ellen Sr. was more intrigued with my toughness, right, or my resilience, Sharon was more concerned at the home environment I was living in and my emotional health. A few years forward, she became my therapist. Oh, she didn't want any part of that. She wanted to refer me to someone else in her group. I wasn't having it. Nope, I'm not doing it. So I think initially she agreed just to make sure I was truly okay before passing me on, which she did later. But in that short amount of time that she worked with me, She taught me how to recognize my own strength and not identify with myself, with where I came from, but more where I wanted to be. Not to identify with what I was experiencing, but what I wanted to experience. That was a really integral part of who I am today. She had made sure before she let me go to someone else, she made sure I knew that there was worth. I was worth something, and I was whole, and I could be whatever I decided to be. So that was really important. I learned to find compassion in the midst of a very confusing time in my life. If she had not given me those tools, I would not be here today, the woman I am. And I'm pretty amazing, right? Yes. Amazing woman. But in a very big part, it was because of those women that I had to emulate, right? The love they had for each other, for their daughter, okay? That was different for me. It was different for me to see parenting that was compassionate, gentle, encouraging, foreign. So I thank you for that, because I have raised 2 children, 3 grandchildren, the way it's supposed to be done. Because Sharon helped me realize there's more to being than abuse, neglect. So, okay, we're gonna move on from there. We are not doing this. The last 3 decades, Sharon was more of a friend. Okay, she was at a consistent hum of that encouragement, that validation I needed in my life. She was a fine example of the dedication, love, and kindness we all know. My friend Sharon made these amazing snickerdoodle cookies that I wish I had one right now, and really warm hugs and comfort. That's what I saw when I saw her, comfort. I was gonna be okay, right? Fortunately, being loved by Sharon means she is with me all the time. So let me offer you this. In our grieving days ahead, let us be reminded that Sharon can rest now and witness all of her hard work and love spread throughout the world, all because of who she loved. She loved us, and now it's our time to forward that love on. May she rest in peace.
Good morning. Old friends, or as I like to say, friends of long standing, are one of life's blessings. Even when you cannot quite remember how or when you met them. I think I met Sharon and Ellen at the 1977 Florida Women's Conference at the Sheraton Twin Towers. It was just the sort of event where you would expect a bunch of feminist activists, the National Organization for Women, NOW, the Women's Political Caucus, those renegade nuns from Apopka, to show up and raise their voices. It was really the beginning of my activism, and already seasoned veterans like Sharon and Ellen quickly became role models and friends. But Sharon danced circles around me, or rather, she marched. With Ellen and their NOW sisters, she marched everywhere. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, St. Louis, wherever there was a NOW conference, they took to the streets for equal rights and reproductive freedom. She marched in Tallahassee. She literally wore out at least 2 pair of sneakers. The ERA, abortion rights, civil rights, gay and lesbian rights, at any opportunity to make good trouble, as John Lewis said, they showed up. they marched. A few of you will remember that ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment faced some opposition in Florida. So when the ratification deadline was extended in October of 1977, it was a cause for celebration, and celebrate we did. We knew we were working hard for justice, but we realized then how important it was to celebrate, to just relax and be together. The violinist at the little Italian restaurant where we had gathered and apparently gotten a little loud asked what we were celebrating, and he called us the Women's Liberation Front. WLF, it stuck. Unofficially, the drinking and carousing arm of the women's movement. We might say today that it began organically. It just happened. There are no rules, no leaders, no one in charge, just BYOB. Bring your own bottle for the children. The first Friday of the month at someone's house to eat, drink, and be merry. And although there was no ceremony, over time we did recognize our beloved founding mothers, Sharon and Ellen among them. Those Friday nights we laughed and sang. Do any of you remember I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar? It is glorious at 2 a.m. We cried, we supported each other, and although we were dedicated to not working, we couldn't help but strategize, write letters, and plan demonstrations. Joan Irwin remembers that sometime, maybe 1988, Sharon and Ellen announced one Friday night that they had found a church, and they thought we would all be welcome there. Really? A church? Do they know that you are, lesbians? Well, you know the rest of that story. By the way, WLF is still going after all these years, but we no longer stay up late and get rowdy on Friday nights. We are more likely to gather on Sunday afternoons, and you're welcome to come. Sharon was a woman of many talents, if you've heard. She was creative. She was a musician, a singer, an artist, a counselor, and a respected mentor, a leader, and a teacher. I remember she made a baby blanket when I was pregnant in 1983. It was white, gold, and purple, and she had to tell me that those were the colors of the suffragist movement. She was a teacher. She was a respected mental health counselor, and she literally defied gravity as a nearly professional water skier. She showed people how to tow a surfboard behind a motorboat because, you know, when there isn't any surf handy. When the marching became difficult, Ellen and Sharon showed up in their little electric vehicle. As you've heard, they were ahead of their times. And they sat proudly on the 1U Pride Parade float at parades. And when they couldn't go to D.C. to be in the Women's March in January of 2017, Sharon crocheted pink pussy hats for some of the 1U contingent. Christine and Karen and Ridge and Kim wore them proudly, and I see them out there today. I've never seen Hal in one before, but I think it's quite becoming. Sharon made a lot of good trouble, but she respected tradition. Every Thanksgiving, for many years, she and Ellen and friends would haul their boat and a few tents out to Tangerine or other camping sites for the annual celebration of the Gourmet Camping and Adventure Club. They would put on their GCAC pink flamingo and palm tree buttons, because of course they had buttons, and enjoy their traditional camping feast, beginning Friday nights with black velvets, which I understand is stout and champagne, with black velvets, fried chicken, vichyssoise, and pumpkin pie. Sometimes they would go tubing, water moccasins be damned, and Sunday morning brunch was always bagels with cream cheese lox and champagne, and the Florida State game. Traditions. I have known Sharon for a long time, and I wish I had known her better and longer. As we said, she was proud of making good trouble, or you might say, in the best way, she was wicked. She came into our lives and taught us something we should know, and we have been changed for the better. I know she left a handprint on my heart.
This is going to be hard. But I am very glad to see everyone, both in person and virtually. This is a great day to celebrate an extraordinary woman. I've been fortunate to know Sharon for over 30 years, and I hope that by sharing some of my precious memories, you'll be able to reveal some of the facets of Sharon's life that you may not be aware of. I met Sharon at the prompting of my cousin who lives in Wisconsin and who has been a lifelong UU member. We'd been discussing my need for community since my move to Orlando, and she suggested that I check out the UU church and ask if they were doing the program Cakes for the Queen of Heaven. So I was at the UU church for a concert. It was a Carol and Bren concert. And I noticed there were two women at the back of Core Hall that were staffing a booth, the table there. And so I decided to come up at intermission and introduce myself and ask that question, if they were planning on doing that. Well, they were apologetic and said that they had recently finished the workshop a couple of months prior, and they introduced themselves and said, but you might really like to go to this women's retreat that that is being held in Jacksonville next weekend. And I was like, okay, I'm game. So Sharon kindly set up a place for me to stay near the host church, and it was an amazing event. Saturday morning after the sessions, there was a breakout, a little retreat, a little time off, and I went out to the courtyard and I heard three women singing. I thought, ooh. So, of course, I had to find out who was singing, and there was one playing a guitar and two others singing the song Bamboo by Peter, Paul, and Mary. Well, I just happened to know the harmonies to that. So I went up and I sang the song with them, and after we were finished, they introduced me to the woman playing guitar. It was Lynn Thames. I will forever be grateful to Sharon and Ellen for their part in this divine intervention in my life. This weekend retreat was the beginning of an amazing friendship. The four of us would get together frequently. I mean, sometimes 3 and 4 times a week. We'd play cards, 500, and Sharon always kept score because nobody else could be trusted with the math. We'd go camping for weekends, or sometimes we'd go to a women's festival or whatever, canoeing. I tell you what, when you stay in a little pop-up camper and sleep in the same space like that, you get to know each other really well. Sharon would let some colorful language fly while we were setting up or striking the camp. It would either be directed at a person or at some stubborn piece of equipment. But we all know Sharon was a potty mouth. We four were also instrumental in planning many of the most wonderful events here at this wonderful community, the church. Most importantly, we sang with the folk group. Here is where Sharon really showed her light. She played many instruments, not just the dulcimers that were here. She played hammer dulcimer. She played piano. She played recorders. She played the accordion. You know, she played the clarinet. She played her bowed psaltery, which was amazing. She was in her element when she was collaborating, making music. She didn't like to do it on her own. She didn't like to just go sit play piano. She wanted to be with people. That was her joy, was to collaborate and create together. Somehow, out of an organic process, the Harmony Sisters were born. I believe it was a need to put an act together for some upcoming Hammerama, which was a talent show of sorts, for those of you who aren't familiar. There were 6 of us in the beginning, however, that over the years, several others were adopted into the group. But this group of misfits, and I mean misfits, were able to create some of my most favorite memories. We sang at the Hammerama songs such as John Prine's In Spite of Ourselves, or the parody of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, which was changed to Power Tools Are a Girl's Best Friend. We sang Carolyn's Party, which we sang earlier in honor of Sharon. And that song really touches us so deeply because nobody played that hammer dulcimer like she did. But one of my most favorite memories, I remember that the church organized a protest of the gay marriage ban. And I remember Sharon sitting on the steps of the courthouse playing her dulcimer with Lynn on guitar while we sang Lynn's Call to Justice song that was prompted by Marnie Harmony called No More Special Privileges. As you've heard before, Sharon and Ellen were very prominent in the fight for justice. We just heard all of the things that they have been doing. They were on the front lines. Human rights, reproductive rights, women's rights, LGBTQ, they were there, and they showed up continuously. We as a community owe them a great deal of gratitude for the immense amount of time, money, and personal energy given so freely for the betterment of all. There is another facet I'd like to share about Sharon. Early on in our friendship, I was able to witness her skills as a professional marriage and family therapist. These were skills she employed in any group setting, in any planning session, anything that she was working with, across the board. She had an uncanny way of getting people to reveal thoughts and concepts that were uncomfortable for them or for the group at large. She helped people feel safe enough to venture into the process. I remember several times how Lynn would comment, I wish I had that skill set. She makes it look so effortless. Sharon was very attuned to the process needed to reach an outcome, even if it wasn't the outcome that was intended. She knew well the human need to be abused and valued everyone's input in a group. She worked hard at the principle of valuing and recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Even so, she would say it was a huge challenge when it came to our public political arena. She struggled with judging or condemning many of the Republican Party. She abhorred the greedy and the users of the public office. Now, the last thing that I'd like to touch on is unusual, but it's true. Sharon is not what I would call a spiritual believer. However, Sharon did value ritual and would want to join in and participate in ceremony and the ritual that many of her friends would have called a spiritual practice. Over the years, we had many, many discussions regarding this, and she would say, I want to believe that there is something more after this life. And then she would pause a bit before but I can't get there. Sharon was raised as a Christian, but as an adult, she actively let go of the constructs of the patriarchal religions. She did have an internal knowing about these patriarchal religions, and she wanted them not. Even at the end, while she lay in the hospital, she had a hard time with this concept of faith. She was a concrete thinker. It was hard for her to suspend her understanding of the world she lived in and accept, as she would put it, that some portal would open up and she would magically be transported to another place. I, on the other hand, I do have an internal knowing. I know that Sharon and Lynn and all of my loved ones who have passed, I know that they are in a better place. I do believe in magic. I believe in the magic of love. And I end by saying, thanks for letting your 5-year-old out to play with my 5-year-old. I love you, Sharon K. Durrant, and thank you for making my life so much more joy-filled.
Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know, my name is Greg Wasden. I am the grandson to both Sharon and Ellen Sr., who I've always known and referred to as Gran and Nini, respectively. I apologize for not being able to present this in person, but I'm happy to say that I was able to fly down and see Gran and give her my love before she passed. Just a few days before it is being read aloud to you all, I am positive that this sanctuary is full, packed with people who have been touched by my Gran's love, kindness, and generosity, because that's who she is, down to her core. Yes, she may have had a potty mouth, and I know, as any married couple do as well, that Nini could get under her skin sometimes. But deep down, in the root of who she is as a person, love and kindness flowed in tangible ways throughout her life. That is what she will be remembered for. As I'm writing this, I'm wondering how to structure it. And having a bachelor's degree in preaching, I thought I would go back to my collegiate teachings and use the 3-topic or 3-point method. Gran meant something just a little bit different to all of us. But for me, these 3 words mean the most: music, outdoors, and family. We all know Gran to be a wonderful and talented musician. The hammered dulcimer was her instrument of choice, but she was a great pianist and singer as well. As I was growing up, I saw all of the beautiful music that she made, and it helped inspire me to pick up instruments of my own as I went through high school. Guitar, piano, violin, trumpet, saxophone, clarinet, just to name a few that I tried out. All these instruments I picked up and explored because she showed me what was possible. I have great memories of sitting with her in the front room making music together, while Nini was in the other room getting a front row seat. I know Nini loved those times, as she always encouraged us to, and I quote, "Get over there and make some music." Outdoor activities are another facet of my relationship with Gran that I will always cherish. They have lived in the same house since the day I was born. Modified and rebuilt courtesy of Hurricane Charlie, but the same location nonetheless. Behind the house is a lake, and the memories are too many to count of my brother and our friends canoeing, paddleboarding, swimming, and jumping off their dock, while being rated on our flips and dives as our hands pruned up from being in the water so long. We would also go out-of-state excursions during summer break to canoe rivers, camp, look for shark's teeth, and go to professional baseball games. Gran allowed me to see and enjoy the outside world from such a young age, something that I will always take with me every day. Lastly, she was my family. Growing up, I never saw her as a step granny. I just had 2 grandmas. That was it, no explanation needed. I think now I have a better idea of her perspective as well. As I recently got married to my beautiful bride, Gina, in the summer of 2021, and on that day, I didn't just become a husband, I also became a stepfather to her 4 children. If there is one thing I've learned from being a step-parent, it is that you get to a point where you no longer have a step preceding the dad part anymore. You are just a dad. I get it now, how Gran felt. First by helping to raise my mom, and then my brother and me. It doesn't matter that she isn't biologically related to us. She is family. She always will be. And she is and always will be my Gran. Thank you for coming today and showing your love and support to my family.
Wow. I didn't meet Sharon and Ellen until about 8 years ago when I joined this church. And what fantastic ladies they are. Two things inseparable in my mind are Sharon and music, her voice, her dulcimer. She shared her talents, not just with us at 1U, but also with the larger community, playing, singing, and teaching. Sharon and Ellen joined the original folk ensemble in 1997 and were an integral part of the group, adding their voices and instruments. They both participated with the folk ensemble in service music as well as community outreach when they brought music to retirement homes, nursing homes, the public library, monthly singing at the Coalition for the Homeless, the VA, Barnes & Noble, the holidays, all of that. Sharon and Ellen were at the first overnight folk ensemble and friends New Year's Eve celebration in 1998, bringing their grandsons, Jeffrey and Gregory. And up until recently, they attended every year, up until recently, thanks to COVID. Some of this was before my time, and I thank Jeffrey and Alex for sharing. Sharon's dulcimer is the reason that much of our folk repertoire is in the key of D. Since a dulcimer can only play in one key at a time. Sharon sang tenor with the Chalice Choir and Accordia, 1U's female a cappella group. She was the one who urged me to join both, and I'm so glad I did. Not just for the music. I always tried to sit close by Sharon so I could hear all of her clever and funny remarks during practice and under her breath during Sunday services. Yeah, she'd joke about getting choir demerits. She also loved the music of Sweet Harmony and the Rock, and some of which we got to sing in the choir. She was active for years as both secretary and on the board of the Alliance, collecting, sorting, selling our donations to each other, and donating the proceeds to charity. She also spent much time as a pastoral care associate, giving comfort to an uncountable number of people when we were going through our times. Sharon had the best t-shirt collection ever. Artsy, political, risque or humorous, but always worth reading. And now, she's the only one of us who truly knows what comes next. But if there's a heaven and there's music in it, I know Sharon's there singing.
We searched the world over and we thought we'd found true love. And we did.
Pardon me while I skip ahead in the script. So I'm calling this Lessons Learned because I had the privilege of walking consciously with my beloved Sharon through the end of her life. And this is what I learned. As Sharon's reluctant end-of-life doula, reluctant because she didn't want to go, and I didn't want her to go, I wanted to take just a moment to reflect on what turned out to be the final days of Sharon's time with us in physical form. Each day that we received less than stellar news from the doctors, I would explain to her where we stood, then ask her if she wanted to talk about how she was feeling. She shared that she didn't understand how things went downhill so fast, and that maybe she should have been more patient about receiving care. When I told her about the healing circles we had and the messages that loved ones offered, she was amazed to hear the names of those who showed up for her, some of whom she had not spoken to in recent years or had moved away long ago. I asked her if she knew how loved she was, and she said no. But over the days that followed, as more bad news arrived and I shared more messages of love and support that were coming through Facebook, Caring Bridge, text messages, emails, and phone calls from friends and family from every facet of her extraordinary life, I asked her again, "Do you know how loved you are?" And finally, there was no argument or disbelief. There was simply a resounding yes. If the death of a loved one is a reminder to the survivors to live more fully in the present, I feel that Sharon is teaching us also to be patient and mindful about our own self-care and never to doubt that we are truly loved. Don't wait until your final days to accept that truth. You are loved. We are loved. Sharon feared that death would be like flipping a light switch, and when everything would just go dark. She didn't want to leave because she hated to miss anything. As a skeptical believer myself, I asked her if she was willing to suspend disbelief and consider that when her bright spirit was released from the confines of the human body, that her light would not dim but expand, that she would become unlimited in her energetic form, and that as she released these human constructs of ego, shame, regret, limiting beliefs and expectations, she would be carried by grace back into the light of truth, once again a part of all that is. She said that she would try. I challenged her to prove me wrong. I find affirmation of that which I cannot see through synchronicity in nature. When I woke up from my post-vigil nap a few hours after her departure, I asked Sharon to choose an oracle card for me, and this is what it said. I waited for dawn, not wanting to go, but knowing I soon would have to leave. I waited for the first light, listening, joining with you on each breath and each exhale. I watched as morning came and you gently stirred, knowing our love was not measured in time, not in minutes that quickly passed, or the hours as departure approached. How I wanted to linger. How I wanted to tell you that this moment would last forever and whisper one more time, I love you. And then you held me and said it first, and goodbye no longer mattered. I winked at her photo and said to our beloved Sharon, who is no longer limited, I told you so. Look for the signs, my friends, and invite her to show up for you. We are grateful to the elements and spirit of all life for giving us the breath, the energy, the tears, and the strength to show up for Sharon today. We have all been held in the comforting cloak of the light of truth. As Reverend Margalie brings us to the conclusion of this celebration and releases us from this sanctuary, let the gentle breeze of the element of air be Sharon's breath upon your cheek as she leans in for a hug. Let the warmth of the sun be the healing balm of Sharon's presence against your skin. Let the gentle rain be Sharon's tears of joy as she celebrates your moments of joy and triumph. Let the bursting of new life each spring be your reminder that Sharon is always near.
I invite us all to just take a moment of silence to just reflect on all that has been shared about Sharon, the laughter, and I like how we just, the last part of this was about her spiritual life. So if we would just take a moment and reflect on her life in silence. Let's close now with a prayer, which will be followed by a reception in Gore Hall. So the family and close friends ask that you join them in Gore Hall following this prayer. So, Spirit of that which accompanies us in times such as these, be with us. We are present here today because of our love for Sharon. Today we celebrate her life and her spirit, not only who she was, but what her life has meant and will always mean. Allow each of us who loved her the gift of holding on to a shining moment of memory that we can carry in our hearts as a candle, a companion in our grief. We have come to remember Sharon as she was long ago and as she was just a few weeks ago. We share in the faith that even in times of sadness, there is room for laughter and there is room for tears. Spirit of creation, help us to remember that the joy that comes from loving and friendship remains with us. And for it is through each of us that Sharon's memory stays alive, that what she stood for will be carried forth. May we be comforted. Amen, and may it be so.